Hello and welcome to episode 31 of the Your Way podcast. So, the weather in the UK has definitely started to transition this week as we move into autumn. And I know for those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, you are now starting to enjoy lighter and warmer days as you transition into spring. And I thought that it was a great opportunity to take the time to dive into what it means to live our lives in line with our natural rhythms and the seasons that we find ourselves in, as well as the seasons that are going on outside. So when I say living in line with our natural rhythms, what do I mean? Like we all have our own individual, unique natural rhythms, and that will determine the times that you naturally might be inclined to go to sleep and wake up, and when you might want to eat, and when you might want to move, and when you're the most productive. And there isn't a one size fits all policy that works for all of that. But often, the way that we are conditioned, the way that society is run, the way that certainly like the corporate world, 9 till 5, or whatever your version of that looks like, has been set up, is that we have these very regimented rhythms that we are given, and they don't necessarily sit alongside our own unique natural rhythms. So, something that you might play around with, and if your current schedule doesn't allow this, you could give this a go when you go on holiday or when you've got a period of time where you do actually have quite a bit of flexibility over your schedule, is to give yourself a period of a week. Don't set alarms, don't have a particular agenda, and just notice what time you start to naturally wake. What time do you feel drawn to going to sleep? When you wake up in the morning, do you feel the need to eat, or actually do you prefer to eat a little bit later? Like, what are your natural rhythms when it comes to eating and sleeping? When do you like to move? Like, so I get up in the morning, I like to stretch and do my exercise first thing. Some people find themselves drawn to do that kind of thing later on in the day. There isn't a right or wrong. This is about doing it your way. When it comes to your natural rhythms, it couldn't be more of a unique process. Again, with your work, are you most productive in the morning? Are you more productive in the afternoons? Maybe you're a night owl. Maybe you like to wake up at 10 a.m. and then you get your best work done between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. It's just looking at for you what works. So for me, I know that I function best if I'm asleep 10:30 p.m., awake about 6:30 a.m. I like to stretch and move my body in the morning. I have a period of like real productivity with work that I can do probably until about 10 a.m. And then I have like another wave between sort of 3 till 5 because I do things on social media when I'm on social media. I'm back now. I probably then do kind of an hour in the evening that's social media based, but it's not at my desk. It's, sitting and faffing about on my phone. Um, I don't always eat breakfast. I used to. I used to wake up and eat straight away. I don't always eat breakfast. Um, and I like a rest during the day. Now, that used to be for a while when I was like deep in my healing work, it used to be that I needed a nap, I needed to sleep in the day for quite a while. That's no longer the case. Actually, still taking some time to rest, I notice is really good for me, works with my natural rhythms. And I notice that it's probably about 3 o'clock that feels good for me. Now, if you were going to look at traditional Chinese medicine and the Chinese calendar, a really good time of day to rest is between 11 and 12 in the morning, so between 11 a.m. and midday. And the Chinese clock, if you look at it, you can Google it, each 2 hour time period relates to an organ in the body. So when that organ does its thing. And between 11 a.m. and midday, that is the heart space, and that is supposedly a really good time to rest. So I'm just sharing that in case your inclination is to rest more in the mornings. Like, again, there isn't a right or wrong. So that is living in line with your natural rhythms. And I just invite you at an appropriate point in time to play around with that and see what feels good for you. Because you're going to feel more vibrant, more resilient, more refreshed when you're doing things your way on that one, rather than whatever you think the right answer should be. And then we move towards, okay, well, how do we then align what we're doing with the seasons? Um, and again, so we're going to be peppering some traditional Chinese medicine and Chinese kind of practices and philosophies into this episode today. It's not an area I talk about a lot, but it's something that I do have an interest in. We certainly focus on it inside my Your Way group during these transitional times. So kind of spring and autumn, we do a month where like some of this gets peppered in. And so as we move into autumn, we're looking at the lungs, we're looking at the large intestines. It's about letting go. If you think about breathing, so lots of like breathing exercises, breath work can be really, really beneficial at this time. Letting go, large intestines, so there might be a detox, but really it's about the emotion related to the large intestine is grief. So you might notice at this time of year, you just start to experience more grief. And it's how can you allow this into your life, particularly again when we live in a society that is set up where we shouldn't feel our feelings and we should just be robots and we just get on with it. If you notice during this season in particular that you tend to feel more sadness and more grief, can you make space for it? Because with all of our emotions, guys, it's always better out than in. We are feeling beings meant to be having feelings and a feeling lived experience, not just robots going through the motions. And those of you in the southern hemisphere transitioning into spring, spring is related to the liver and the gallbladder. Again, can be a really good time to do some kind of a cleanse, just if your body feels it needs it. If it doesn't, then crack on as normal. But what you might notice at this time as you transition into spring is feeling more anger. Like anger is the emotion connected to the liver. And again, you might look at some stuff about how you support liver health. Like liver is the liver. The liver is such an important organ in our body because it's responsible for the detoxification that we go through. And we live in a toxic world right now. Like our food is a lot of the time toxic. We put all this chemical stuff on our bodies. Like there's toxins in pretty much everything. And then our environment can be toxic. Like the people we can be around, the news we take in, all of this stuff can be toxic. And the body's trying to process this all the time. So again, spring for you Southern Hemispherians can be a lovely time to think about this. And then again, that transition into spring is thinking about, okay, well, what do I want to cultivate at this time? What seeds do I want to plant? So that come summer, there is a harvest. Like, what are you planting now that you want to create? So for me, spring is a great time for goal setting, like setting clear intentions, thinking about what you want from the months ahead. Autumn or fall, for my US friends, is about letting go. It's about taking the time to look back at, okay, well, what did you cultivate? What are we harvesting right now that got planted in spring and that grew in summer? What are all the things that you've created? How can you celebrate that? And then what are you hanging on to that doesn't serve you and doesn't get to come along for the next chapter? So if you think about autumn/fall, the leaves fall off the trees. What is your metaphorical leaf that you need to let go of so that your tree can do its thing to come back even stronger in the spring? So they are some things to think about from a very practical, what's the weather doing outside perspective in terms of what you eat. So as the weather cools, we want to eat more warming foods, foods that are easy to digest. Like this is a point of time. So those of you in the Northern Hemisphere, our immune systems can take a little bit of a battering, like the changing weather can be quite challenging. Can you support and nourish your system so that it transitions into autumn and winter without you getting sick? So, soups, stews, warming spices, all of that good stuff. It's probably time, come the end of September, middle of October, that we leave the salads behind, we leave the cold foods behind, we just give our bodies warmth. And then you guys in the Southern Hemisphere, and it doesn't really get that cold for some of you, but as you go into spring, you might then be having lighter foods, cooler foods to support your system. So just some stuff for you to think about there. And you take or leave it, right? This is the Your Way podcast. This isn't the Louise the Dictator podcast. So you just listen to what I'm saying, take what resonates, leave what doesn't. And then the final thing that I want to just pop on the shelf today for you to have a look at and decide whether you want to pick it up is also recognizing the season of life that you are in, because the season of life that you are in might not match the season when you look outside. So you might be in the depths of winter when you look outside, but you're full of energy and you're kind of in a summer energy and you've got loads of stuff that you want to get done and you feel vibrant and you feel alive and you feel inspired and you've got stuff to get out there and say. You don't have to be hunkered down and hibernating if that's where you're at. Similarly, if it's the middle of summer and you are in a wintering phase, can you let yourself rest, hibernate, nourish, like be supported in that way? And I haven't read it and I can't remember who's written it, but if you Google it, you'll find out really quickly. But a book that's been recommended to me by many clients and it is a fantastic book on this is a book called Wintering. And that really helps support you to look for ways and approaches that you can really honor the season that you are in. Like we live in a world of so many shoulds. It's like Northern Hemisphere, January the 1st comes along and it's like, right, it's January the 1st. Set your goals, set your intentions, new year, new you. Now, for most of us in the Northern Hemisphere, we're like, oh, it's dark. I'm tired. I don't want to do this. And we can push past that. We can override. If you're listening to this podcast, we're all pretty good, probably. We've got some form on overriding where we're at and what we need. And this is your invitation to not do that quite so much. So even if all the noise out there is like, it's time to do your goal setting, you might be like, I'm going to need a bit more. I need a bit more rest before I do that, actually. Or for you, August, September, start of school season, you might be like, well, this is my time when I feel like I want to get up and go. Even if the season's like, yeah, but it's time to slow down, right? So can you honor your own internal season? Can you recognize the season that you're in your physical environment and do some stuff to live in line with that? Like, what would it look like to give yourself the space to feel the anger or the space to feel the grief rather than just pushing on through? And then finally, can you honor your natural rhythms for how your particular body at this particular point in time, because it can change and that's okay, how it wants to move, eat, sleep, work, do all the things, right? Because true health, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, there's a fifth one. I can't remember it right now. There's no notes for this podcast. True health comes when you are living in a way that matches what's right for you and your system, not what everyone else out there is telling you you should do. Because we live in a world where what has become normal is so far removed from being natural and healthy, it's no longer funny. Right. So don't look out there for inspiration on how you're meant to live your life because you're going to be hard pressed to find it. Instead, look within you. I mean, look out there to nature. Nature's got some tools that you might benefit from, but look inside to you and find out what works for you and do that, and you won't go far wrong. So I hope this has given you some useful stuff to think about. I would love it to hear from you when you have listened or watched this, depending on when you are where you are checking this out. Come and let me know. And I wish you all a fantastic second half of the month. And I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Much love. Mwah. Before you go, I so hope that you enjoyed today's episode. And if you did, I'd like to ask you a favor, please, because the way that this podcast grows and the way that more people get to benefit from these materials is that more people find it. And that means that subscribes and likes and shares are so, so important to this space. So, my ask of you, if you got value from the podcast today, is give it a review, give it a like, share it with a friend, and make sure that you are subscribed. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you being here. And I look forward to continuing to support you to do life, business, relationships, and all of it your way.